With this video, I want to help you make your weekend just a little bit better. I know a lot of you guys, especially fans on this channel, are probably looking forward to the Outer Worlds later this month, Wastelanders next month. So what I'm hoping to do with this video is giving you something to actually hold you over, to make that wait not so bad. As in this video, I'm going to be showing you the top 5 overhaul mods for Fallout 4. And to be clear with that, I mean those comprehensive mods where you just download one singular mod and it'll totally transform your experience. So hopefully it'll achieve an easy 1, 2, 3 process if you're trying to get back into this game. Just download this one thing, maybe a couple of extra mods to your taste, and you're ready to go. These are also not to be confused with mods that are overhauling one aspect of the game. In this one, I really try to look more at the comprehensive mods, the ones affecting a lot that you could just focus on for an entire playthrough. I'm actually going to have a separate video coming in the future looking at certain mods that overhaul one thing like sim settlements with the settlement system. But either way, starting things off, we do have Unbogus Fallout Overhaul, which is actually the least popular on this list, at least going by downloads, and yet one of the most recently updated on this list. This is a pretty comprehensive mod. It's going to affect almost everything about this game. You'll hear me saying that a lot throughout this video, and as such, I can't tell you everything it does, but here I'll touch on some of the most notable and profound changes it brings to the table. One of the first ones you're going to notice is it just makes the game a lot harder. You're going to have less health in general, starting with a base of 100 and then gaining 20 per point you put in endurance. Weapon physics are totally changed with this. This is probably one of the biggest changes you'll actually notice after downloading this, at least in the first day or two. You're going to have to aim just differently, whether it be higher above your enemy's head, further ahead of them as they are running at you. I noticed myself missing way more shots as some of these bullets are calibrated to their caliber type. There's been a flat out balance overhaul for all of the weapons in the game, with the goal of making almost any weapon viable with upgrades from the start to the end. But also, and this is one of the big ones, there's been overhauls to the enemy AI, and you'll notice enemies chase you a lot more and a lot further. After attacking a couple of enemies, they will follow you for a very long distance, much longer than they would typically in vanilla Fallout 4, and also they'll just almost immediately start chasing after you. But to go along with this and some of this additional challenge, there's actually been several new items, perks, and even weapons added into this game. Some of these are totally new, but other ones are actually restored cut content, things that were never completely added into Fallout 4. Some of these, especially some of the chems, can be very powerful and are actually really cool additions to this game. Some of them will just all around give you flat out bonuses, other ones are pretty situational, like certain bandages to help repair your limbs, which will probably be breaking a lot more often with this mod. You'll find stealth to just all around be a lot less viable, but now there's actually some distraction items that you can throw. There's quite a few new perks added in with this, some of these based around stealth and just having an all around more stealthy playthrough. Loot is going to be a lot scarcer with this mod overall, and really the idea behind that was to push a more trade focused playstyle. After downloading Unbogus Fallout Overhaul, you're not going to be able to rely on looting alone. You're going to have to go to some of those major towns and deal with some of those vendors if you want certain ammo types or certain items. And as I mentioned earlier, while you're at some of those vendors, you'll likely find some totally new things that you've never seen before in Fallout 4. And I would say just in general, this is a pretty good overhaul mod. It checks most of the boxes, doing a flat out rebalance, adding in new items, adding in new mechanics, and changing up some of those vanilla things that you've gotten used to and tired of. But moving on from that, another mod that you may be interested is actually totally different, and that is Depravity, and really Depravity / Project Valkyrie. I'm already breaking that rule I established earlier with having just one mod, but these two really act as a combo, and they are particularly cool. So while Unbogus Fallout Overhaul is really more of a gameplay change or overhaul, Depravity is more of a story change or overhaul. Although it does add in a couple of new gameplay elements, the core focus of these two mods is giving you a different way to play through Fallout 4. And it's actually pretty awesome. It makes you reappreciate this game and some of its core mechanics. A lot of the stuff in Fallout 4 actually is a lot of fun. You just might have gotten tired of playing through the same exact quests or taking down the same exact enemies over and over again. What Depravity is going to do is give you an alternate route, almost a raider quest line to clear through some of those core Fallout 4 quests. This is by far the newest mod on this list. Depravity is going to give you a different way to complete the first and second acts of Fallout 4. 4, while Project Valkyrie, an optional secondary mod that you can take, will give you a different third act and an ending to this game. But this is all quite lore friendly and really well integrated into the base game. You'll be dealing with and interacting with a lot of familiar faces. Now, rather than having to track down Kellogg with Nick Valentine, you could just do it by yourself by breaking into his house. You don't have to kill Kellogg like you typically have to. He'll actually give you a different avenue to take, as he'll actually explain what the Institute is doing and actually help you decode the Courser chip, and quite literally cutting Virgil out of the equation. And although a big part of these mods is progressing or giving you an alternate route to complete Fallout 4's main story, it also adds in a lot of its own quests and content also, but at familiar locations. You'll find totally new quest lines that integrate themselves into Diamond City, into Good Neighbor, into the Cabot House. It'll give you more things to do, more options on how to resolve certain situations. And that really is one of the core aspects of these mods, making Fallout 4 have more options and feel more like a true RPG. So if you're somebody who's mostly okay with Fallout 4's gameplay and you're just looking for an avenue to re-experience the main story, this is definitely going to be the mod for you. It changes up a lot, making me re-interested in a story I've completed numerous times already. At the same time, it gives you some other avenues to maybe use a lighter weight gameplay mod. But as I mentioned before, that's more of a story overhaul and change. If you still are interested in other ways to totally mash up or change the gameplay, we also do have immersive gameplay. This mod's actually kind of simple in that it does exactly what the title suggests. It's a complete pass in many of the systems and gameplay features of Fallout 4, just trying to make them more immersive. One of the big parts of this is this mantra to not give enemies these random empowerments. When you see another human carrying another gun, he's kind of your equal. No longer are you going to find these hyper bullet spongy enemies. If you shoot him in the head, he's going to go down. But if he shoots you in the head, even just once, you'll probably also go down. The time to kill is drastically lowered, both for you against others, but also for others against you. You'll certainly have to play quite a bit smarter after installing this one. Outside of that, the enemy's AI is also overhauled. They won't just mindlessly run at you anymore, but now they'll take cover, shoot at you from that cover. But one of the other things you might notice with this one is that enemies will run out of ammo, and it's fairly quick. You are still in the wasteland. It's not like all of a sudden enemies have infinite amounts of ammo to them. After a little bit of shooting, they might just start running at you with melee weapons because they ran out of bullets. That's really the only option they'll have at that point. This mod too brings pretty sweeping changes to your special stats and the perks overall. Right off the bat, you're going to notice you have more special points to allocate, starting off with 6 in every special, and then a few points you could spend after that. But as far as the perks go, it actually removes all the level requirements from these. You'll still have a certain special requirement, but if you want to get Medic 3 and you have all the special points required for that, then you could just get it. No longer will it require you to be level 40 first before you actually can unlock that. Even further, for some of the weapon perks, they actually will no longer increase your damage output. There's really no way to increase a weapon's damage output outside of modifying that weapon itself. The weapon perks will now increase things in other ways, like lowering your spread, making it so you're just more steady with that weapon, but won't just magically increase your damage because that's not really feasible. And one of the other really big parts around this mod is actually in crafting. You might notice now, as you actually go to scrap a car that you find in a settlement, it'll give you like 2,000 steel and a ton of other resources, things that are probably true to form, how many resources that car probably contained. So the way crafting is going to work in this is actually pretty interesting. Some of these raw resources can be a lot easier to get when you're actually scrapping natural things you find at settlements, making it so while you're modifying weapons, a lot of the costs are exactly the same to vanilla Fallout 4. You might have 60,000 steel and it'll still only require 5 steel or so to actually add on a weapon mod. But conversely, when it comes to actually placing objects down in your settlement like a steel wall, that'll now require several hundred steel, making it so it actually balances out in the end, especially if you really go a camp building route. All around, this is definitely a pretty cool one. It's going to make Fallout 4 just feel a little bit more fair. It's without a doubt making it a harder game, but it's doing so in natural ways, in ways that actually make a lot of sense just from a logical standpoint. But then for the next mod on this list, I want to show you something different. With all of the mods I've shown you thus far, the objective is pretty consistent. You're trying to beat Fallout 4's story or complete some of those exact same quests. With Depravity, it's in a bit of a different style, but at the end of the day, you're trying to find your son or take down the Institute or side with some other faction. Conversely, with the Frost Survival Simulator mod, you're getting a totally different experience by just getting a totally different objective. With this mod, you're not really going to be focusing on quests quests in your Pip-Boy, you're trying to beat Fallout 4's main story. In fact, the main story isn't even there. It's removed when you download this one. With this one, the goal is actually a lot simpler. It's just survive. This mod is totally going to change Fallout 4's Commonwealth, pretty much unlike anything else in this video. The setting now is a few years after the Great War, just a few years after these bombs dropped. You find the Commonwealth in a nuclear winter state with radiation levels still high. All of the NPCs or quests you knew about from vanilla Fallout 4 are removed. The objective here is no longer to talk to that person or do this quest for them, it's just again to survive, to not die in the wilderness. With this mod, you'll find a lot of new NPCs in their place. There are rudimentary factions set up following the bombs dropping in this kind of post-war state. You'll go to some of those familiar locations like Good Neighbor and just find a ton of enemies or random raiders inhabiting it. But really, one of the biggest changes around Frost is in the actual combat gameplay. You're no longer someone that's special, a war veteran, or someone out of a vault. You're just some random dude that happened to survive. And that is carried over into the actual gameplay. Your accuracy is bad, and a lot of mods claim that, but with Frost, you're gonna really feel it. Even at point blank range, sometimes you'll miss with your gun because you don't know how to aim. Over time, you definitely can take perks to build this up, improve yourself in combat, but also combat in this is ridiculously hard. It's meant to be played on survival mode, but also damage is pretty much even. You'll one-shot most enemies, but they'll also one-shot you in return. The same applies to melee weapons. Unless you have armor, if you get hit, you'll probably just die. There's a lot of new health items and other miscellaneous items added in to kind of pad on this experience, bandages to help you heal faster, but all of that is really secondary. What really makes Frost so unique and interesting is that it really again is just down to that fundamental goal of survival. You'll die a lot with this mod, and ammo is really scarce. Actually having even a couple of hundred ammo is going to be a pretty big deal. The world in Frost is not leveled, so sometimes you'll run across a super high level enemy that will seriously be dangerous, but if you manage to take him down, he'll have amazing loot. But considering even from level 1, you'll always be encountering people of different levels, it really keeps things interesting. It keeps you on your toes and paying attention. Even if you have pretty good gear, you could always find someone that has a lot better gear than you. Although there's no quests in the official way, sometimes you can find little notes or stories giving you background or lore around some characters or something to go do, find, or take down. But all around, this is a cool one because it's so different. It really narrows the focus of this game, but gives you a totally different yet simpler experience, which personally I find to be an absolute blast when you're looking for something a bit different than just typical questing. But then last but not least, we have what is without a doubt the largest of the mods I talk about in this video, not in the sense that it has the largest download size, but in the sense that it pretty much affects every gameplay aspect of Fallout 4. This one's actually hard to cover in this video because there's literally just so much to cover that I can't feasibly talk about everything, but even further, it's almost, I think, for some users a little intimidating to get into it. There's a lot of new stuff to learn and understand, but if you're looking for a truly transformed Fallout 4 experience, still being around the same base game, still playing some of the same quests, but having a variety of totally new systems, this is kind of the mod. So like many of the other mods in this video, this is a survival focused experience. You're meant to play it on survival mode, and there's actually a lot of new items added in to augment that. The health pool in Horizons bounced around the idea that it's not going to be you one-shotting enemies and them one-shotting you. Time to kill should still be relatively quick, not super bullet spongy. It's more so you have enough time to try and make decisions around combat about what you want to do next. When you get hurt in this mod, there's going to be a lot of different options for healing. You have things like combat stim packs, ultra radaway, but then other various methods for actually healing damaged limbs or your character overall. Doctors actually play a much larger role with this mod and have a lot more features to them. You'll find at certain points you're gonna have to use a doctor, and they're balanced around that. But also the consumption system in this is totally changed. Compared to vanilla Fallout 4, you'll have to eat and drink less often, more akin to what it would be like in real life, just a couple of meals a day, which on one hand does balance things out pretty nicely, but on the other hand, it's going to be a lot harder to actually get properly unradiated food. It no longer will be quite as simple as just placing down a few water purifiers and waiting for them to collect. One of the other pretty cool parts is it actually has several different difficulty modes. You have some of the typical ones, like if you just want a slightly more modified Fallout 4 experience, while it's not too much harder. You have the typical ones that are a bit harder, but then also some extremely difficult ones in the form of Desolation mode. This making items overall a lot more scarce and just the game in in general quite a bit harder. Although one of the other big parts and goals is you're meant to rely more on the in-game economy. You're going to have to spend and earn caps, and you'll probably run out of caps in this process. You'll find yourself shopping around and actually using some of those vendors a lot more often, including some of the other ones you probably always ignored, like doctors or some of the meat traders. Settlements in this receive a pretty comprehensive overhaul. There are now things like settler jobs. There's a ton of new crafting tables you're going to want to place down. In order to create some of those production machines, you're actually going to need to fuel them and have other requirements associated with it. There's much more of a focus and a value on creating interconnected settlement systems, actually rebuilding the Commonwealth through the settlement mode. And if you want to succeed with this mod, you're going to kind of have to do that, but it'll also reward you as you do. There's an architect system added in with this, so you could place down pretty full-fledged buildings and structures for you to build out and live in. There are numerous new crafting tables added in with this that bring new features or different ways to access older features. Ammo crafting makes a return with this mod, but also weapon crafting. You can craft and configure certain experimental weapons, and this is very much so one of those systems that's interconnected. You require one crafting table before the other to actually get to some of those higher tier items, higher tier structures. But also leveling in combat has a pretty comprehensive overhaul. It'll be quite a bit different. With this, there's going to be far less levels overall, but the perks are going to be much more valuable. This creates a scenario where you're just going to have harder choices. It creates quite a bit of replayability because you could go one build or a totally separate build, but probably not both. And even further, it adds in certain specializations with certain weapon perks, giving you extra bonus damage and really kind of defining you down a certain path towards the mid to late game. Skills make a return with this mod, but they're integrated in a more natural way. You get skills by doing certain things, finding certain items, or of course by actually taking certain perks. And all these skills are interwoven as crafting requirements or ways to kind of unlock new technologies in a way. But even beyond that, this actually adds in a lot more character and variations among enemies. You'll find new types of raiders that do slightly different things. Enemies will have certain strengths and weaknesses associated with them, and knowing them will be a key to success here. There are new weak points or spots added in with almost all of the various enemies, and even further, they're going to have their AI change, so they'll use different tactics compared to vanilla Fallout 4. And they're balanced differently also. Everyone's going to kind of have the same base health, but as enemies actually level up, they'll get additional and better armor. But you also have some tools to counteract that. There's actually a variety of new ammo types added in with this, and on the fly, you could actually change the ammo and fire type of your weapon. Horizon bases weapon damage on caliber, so an automatic weapon, although having a higher DPS, will do the same per shot damage as a single fire one. With this, there's actually a ton of new weapons added in, especially if you download the official Horizon weapon pack. These of course supporting all of the in-game systems, and a lot of them are pretty cool. It's taking an existing theme or concept among Fallout 4 weapons and twisting it or slightly changing it, adding in something cool that fits in really well. And really, that's just kind of a brief overview of what you could actually do with this mod. There is so much more to unpack and understand if you want to have a full playthrough with it, although fortunately there's a lot of documentation. It's without a doubt a lot to get into if you've never done it before, but typically you could actually go through a playthrough and pause when you get confused and find the answers to the questions you'll probably have, which is super helpful, and it's not something I could say for every mod in this video. Horizon is definitely one of those mods that might be a little bit harder to actually play through initially, but once you actually get it, once you understand what's going on, it is extremely rewarding and a truly distinctive Fallout 4 experience. But with all that being said, that is a look at the top 5 overhaul mods for Fallout 4. Hopefully watching through this video, at least one of these mods really spoke to you. It's something you really want to go play or download. I think watching this video, there should really be something for everyone. For those of you that despise or hate the Fallout 4 gameplay, to those of you that don't even want to play traditional Fallout 4 at all. Either way, with all that being said, again, I thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope to see you all next time. Later.